He or she who wants to attain peace should practice being upright, humble, and capable of using loving speech. He or she will know how to live simply and happily with senses calm, without being covetous and carried away by the emotions of the majority. Let him or her not do anything that will be disapproved of by the wise ones. And this is what he or she contemplates. May everyone be happy and safe, and may all hearts be filled with joy. May all beings live in security and in peace. Beings who are frail or strong, tall or short, big or small, invisible or visible, who are near or far away, already born or yet to be born, may all of them dwell in perfect tranquility. Let no one do harm to anyone. Let no one put the life of anyone in danger. Let no one out of anger or ill will wish anyone any harm. Just as a mother loves and protects her only child at the risk of her own life, cultivate boundless love to offer to all living beings in the entire cosmos. Let our boundless love pervade the whole universe, above, below, and across. Our love will know no obstacles. Our hearts will be absolutely free from hatred and enmity, whether standing or walking
And we are in the University of Nottingham with our retreat, living mindfully, living peacefully. I remember in the retreat organized in Rome, there were about 70 children. And they were given a homework to do during the retreat and after the retreat. The day before, they went to a grocery store nearby and bought a bag of corn, seeds of corn. And people usually buy in order to make popcorn, but they did not have the intention to make popcorn. They bought a bag of it. It's about 1,000 grains of corn inside. And in the morning of the 5th day, they offer to each person 1 grain of corn, children and adults alike. And they are supposed to bring it home and plant it in a pot. They make sure they are supposed to come and visit the seed of corn every day and give some water. And 10 days after the planting, they may see already a young plant of corn with 2 or 3 leaves. And they should come and talk to the plant of corn. And the first question they may ask the plant of corn is this one. My dear little plant of corn, do you remember the time you were a tiny seed? Yeah, we asked the young plant of corn. And the young plant of corn may have forgotten. And the young plant of corn may look up, very surprised. Me, a grain of corn? I don't believe it. You know, the plant of corn, they don't speak English like we do here. They don't speak Italian either. But they have their way of talking, their way of communicating. So if you are very attentive, you can understand what it tried to tell you. So the plant of corn will look up, very surprised, and said something like, me, a little grain of corn? I don't believe it. And then you have to help her, because you know you have planted the seed of corn. You have come every day and water the seed of corn. You know very well that is the truth. So you try your best to help him, to help her, the young plant of corn, to remember. Listen, my dear. I remember very well the time when you were a tiny seed of corn. They had given it to me during the retreat, and I planted you in this spot. And I have waited several days before you sprout and put forth the first leaf. So I know very well that you have been a grain of corn. So with your help, the plant of corn will be able to remember and acknowledge the fact that she had been at one time a grain of corn. And if you do better, when you look at the plant of corn, even if you don't see the grain of corn anymore, you know that the grain of corn is still there somewhere. The grain of corn has not died. Because if the grain of corn had died, the plant of corn would not have been there. So you know that somehow the grain of corn is still alive in the plant of corn. And if you look deeply into the plant of corn, you can still see the grain of corn in it. It doesn't have the form of a grain anymore, but it's still alive. It is in the grain of corn. And you know very well that the plant of corn is a continuation of the grain of corn. You are intelligent enough to know it, that the plant of corn is a continuation of the grain of corn. And you tell the plant of corn, I know the grain of corn in you is not dead, it's still alive. You don't see it, but you have come from it. And when I look at you, I see the grain of corn in you. If you are a practitioner of meditation, you can see very well the seed of corn present in the plant of corn. And when you look at yourself into your body, what do you see? You don't believe that at one time in the past you were a tiny seed also. You were a very tiny seed in the womb of your mother, and much smaller than the grain of corn. And you don't remember that. So Thich is helping you to remember the time you were a very tiny seed in the womb of your mother, and you are a continuation of that seed. And if you look deeply, you still see that seed in you, still alive. When you practice meditation, you can see many things that other people cannot see. Do you remember that wonderful time you spent in the womb of your mother? Maybe you have a vague memory of that time. It's so comfortable there. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. The temperature is just right, and it's very soft. And you spend about 9 months in that wonderful abode. In Vietnamese and in Chinese, we call that place, in the womb of your mother, the palace of the child. Tử cung means the palace of the child. It's so wonderful, so comfortable place to be in. The most wonderful thing is that you did not have to worry about anything. You did not think of the past. You did not think of the future. You did not think of eating, drinking, because everything was done by your mommy. She drank for you, she ate for you, she breathed for you. You did not have to do anything at all. And your father was taking good care of your mother. And it is possible for us to remember that time when you were a tiny seed in the womb of your mother. The day when your mother was aware that you were there inside of her, she was so happy. She bloomed like a flower, and love is born in her. Although you have not learned English, but she already talked to you in English. She said something like, "Darling, I know you are there. I am very happy." She's practicing the first mantra, the second mantra. And your presence brought a lot of joy to your mom and your dad. You were very tiny, and yet you are the object of love. And your mother was very careful. She stopped drinking alcohol. She stopped smoking because she knew that doing so will harm you inside. That is out of love. And she did not wait, stay up too late in the evening, in the night. She tried to do things gently, and she cared about what she eat. She selected the good things to eat only, because she knew that eating something that is not good for her, it will not be good for you. So there's a lot of love, a lot of care from the part of your mother. And your father was equally happy, and she took good care of your mother. He did not dare to say anything that make your mother worry or angry. Because if your mother was angry, and you inside, you get angry also. So out of love, your father was very mindful not to say or not to do anything that make your mom suffer, because if he make your mom suffer, he make you suffer. So love is a great, and many of us do not remember that time. The moment when you were born is a very difficult moment for you, for your mother, and for your father. It took a lot of pain for you to come out. And when you come out, they cut the umbilical cord, because you had been connected to your mother by a long cord. The air that your mother breathed come through you, through that umbilical cord. The food that your mother ate went to you through that umbilical cord. It's quite long. And when you were born, they cut the umbilical cord. And you have to be on your own from that moment. You have to eat by yourself. She cannot eat for you anymore. You have to drink for yourself. She cannot drink for you anymore. And you have to breathe for yourself. She cannot breathe for you anymore. It's so difficult for you. It's so difficult for her. And it was a very dangerous moment. You had to learn how to make your first in-breath. It's not easy for a child, for a baby. There was some liquid in your lungs. And if you could not get it out of your lungs, you cannot take in your first in-breath. So you try your best. If you did not succeed, you will die. So that is a very critical, difficult moment for you, for your mother, and so on. But happily, you have survived. You were able to expel the liquid from your lungs and take in the first in-breath. You don't remember that moment. Thầy is helping you to remember, like you are helping the young plant of corn to remember. Although you have 2 arms, 2 feet, a mouth and nose, but you still need someone to feed you, to help you, to make you warm, to make you comfortable. And that was provided by your mother, your father. And what I would like to remind you today is that during the time you were in the womb of your mother from time to time talked to you. And although you had not learned English, you understood. There's another way of communication. Sometimes you would like to remind your mother that you were there. So you gave a kick. It means, Mommy, I'm here. And she got the message. She said, Darling, I know you are there. Because sometimes she may forget. And when you have grown up to be a little boy or a little girl, you might do the meditation practice that you want the little plant of corn to do. You want the little plant of corn to look deeply and to see herself as a small grain of corn, and to know that she is a continuation of the grain of corn. And I want you to know that you have come from a very small grain, planted by your mother and your father. And you are the continuation of that grain. It means you are a continuation of your father and your mother. You believe that your mother is outside of you. Your father is outside of you. But that is only part of the truth. The truth is that your mother is in you. Your father is in you, in every cell of your body. And wherever you go, you carry your father and your mother with you. And when you smile, your father and your mother in you smile. When you cry, your father and mother cry with you. And when you are happy, your father and mother are happy in you. And when you suffer, your mother and your father suffer with you. And if you practice better, you see that not only your father and mother are in you, but all generations of ancestors are in you. Every time you are able to take in one in-breath and feel happily, all your ancestors in you feel happy. When you are able to make a step full of stability and freedom and joy, all your ancestors in you rejoice. So you are not practicing for yourself alone. You are practicing for your parents and your ancestors. When you hear the small bell, please stand up and bow to the Sangha before you go out and continue this Dharma discussion. Dear friends, when a young man or a young lady get angry, very angry at their father, they may make statements like, that man, he's not my father. I don't want to have anything to do with him anymore. So there are young people who declare things like that. They have suffered so much. Their relationship has not been good. They have suffered so much, father and son, mother and daughter. And in desperation, in despair, they said things like that. She's not my mother. I don't want anything to do with her anymore. In the light of interbeing, your father is inside of you, in every cell, and you are the continuation of your father, whether you like it or not. You are your father. You are the continuation of your father. You and your father constitute a stream flowing. And wherever you go, you carry your father and mother and ancestors. It's impossible to remove our father from us, because you are his continuation. You are him. 20 years ago, after the public talk, I was practicing walking meditation in a street of London, and I saw a book displayed in a bookstore, and the book title was My Mother, Myself. I did not buy the book because I had the impression that I knew what was in the book. It's true that you are a continuation of your mother, and you are your mother. So the intention to remove your mother from your life is not realistic. It's not possible. You have to reconcile with her within yourself. And when you have been able to do that, you can reconcile with her outside. When you get angry at your father, you get angry with yourself. Like when you have the insight of interbeing, you see things like that. You see that suffering and happiness are no longer individual matter. If the father suffers deeply, there's no way that the son can be truly happy, and vice versa. So helping the father, you help yourself. Helping your son, you are helping yourself. And there are ways to do it. And yesterday we learned about deep listening, compassionate listening, and loving speech. The practices that can restore communication, open the door of the heart for reconciliation to be possible. It does not take a long time. 5 days of practice may be enough for you to use loving speech and deep listening in order to restore communication and reconcile. The other day we spoke about the 4 establishments of mindfulness. The 4 domains of mindfulness. And we know that the first one is the body. And there are 4 exercises to contemplate the body. And the next establishment is the feeling. And there are also 4 exercises proposed by the Buddha for us to take care of our feelings. The third establishment of mindfulness is the mind. And mind here may be understood as all the mental formations. There are 51 categories of mental formations. The good one, the not so good one, and the indeterminate one that can be either good or not good. Like thinking. Thinking might be good, and thinking might not be good. So it depends on your way and the moment. And the 4th foundation of mindfulness is object of mind. There are also 4 exercises of mindful breathing. In order to recognize and look deeply into every mental formations. Mind here is a river, and the drops of water that make up the river are mental formations. Mental formations are born, stay for a while, and die, and they succeed each other. Mental formations flow like a river, and we call that river the river of mind. There's a hate, anger, fear, despair. There is mindfulness, concentration, love, and so on. So we sit on the bank of the river of the mind and recognize, contemplate, and look deeply into every mental formation as they manifest. And the first exercise is recognizing the mental formation. Any mental formation, whether they are anger or fear or compassion or joy that arise, we should be able to recognize it as it is, a simple recognition. The second exercise is to bring, to gladden your mind. There are ways in order for you to recognize these mental formations and to help them to manifest, to help them to bloom. If we know to recognize the good things, the good seeds in the bottom of our consciousness, and water them and help them to manifest, like the seed of joy, of brotherhood, sisterhood, the seed of compassion, the seed of understanding. And then we can create joy. And that is the second practice, to gladden our mind, to make joy, happiness possible by the touching and the watering of the good seeds that are already in us. We feel light, we feel liberated, we feel joyful, we feel happy, because we are able to touch these wonderful seeds in us. Like in a retreat, we come together and we try to do that. While we practice walking meditation, we use mindfulness in order to bring our mind back to the body and to recognize the many wonders of life that are in us and around us. And every step can bring joy, can bring the kingdom of God, can bring peace and brotherhood. And that is the practice of the second exercise, bringing joy, gladdening the mind. It's very important. That's for our nourishment and healing. And when we are strong, we will be able to handle the afflictions, the despair, the suffering in us. Aware of mind, gladdening the mind. The third is concentration, concentrating the mind. With mindfulness, we begin to focus our attention on a particular object. That object might be our joy, or our unhappiness, or our pain. That object might be a cloud or a pebble. But using the strength of mindfulness and concentration, we look deeply into the object of our meditation, of our mindfulness. And in order to succeed, we should concentrate, we should make our concentration powerful. So concentration, samadhi, help you to break through. And that is why the fourth exercise of mindfulness, of mindful breathing, is to liberate the mind. The third, concentrating the mind. And the fourth, liberating the mind. Salvation here, liberation here, is not by grace, but by mindfulness and concentration. It's like when you have a lens and you receive the sunshine, and you concentrate the sunshine, and on this end you can burn a piece of paper. So with the power of concentration, we can burn away the afflictions that are in us. And when we come to the object of mind, we deal with the problem of perception. We believe that there is a mind that's trying to perceive an objective world. But we have learned that object of perception and subject of perception, they cannot be separated. They manifest at the same time. So the object of your perception is called in Buddhism the object of mind, not a objective world, objective reality. We have said that many scientists of our time still believe that our consciousness is something in here, trying to reach out in order to understand the objective reality out there. So that is still in the realm of discrimination between object and subject of perception. The first exercise that the Buddha proposed on the realm of perception is contemplating impermanence. Breathing in, I contemplate impermanence. I see everything is changing. Nothing stays the same in two consecutive moments, including my body, including my feelings, my perceptions, including all my mental formations and my consciousness. Everything is is moving, is changing. Intellectually, that is not difficult to understand. But impermanence should not be only be a notion, a concept. It should be an insight. Because many of us accept the truth of impermanence, but we still behave as if things are permanent. We think of ourselves as permanent. We think of our beloved one as permanent. We believe that that institution can be permanent. And when things are impermanent, and we believe them to be permanent, we suffer. That is why the first insight that you have to get is the insight of impermanence. Insight and not the notion. We all have the notion, the understanding of impermanence. But impermanence is not an insight yet. Just an idea. An idea alone cannot liberate you. We have to distinguish between the idea, the notion of impermanence and the insight of impermanence. And we have to cultivate the insight of impermanence in order to liberate us. Many of us are caught in the notion of impermanence. First, we are caught in permanence. And the teaching of impermanence come to rescue us. And we embrace and we got stuck into the idea of impermanence. How can we help a person who is stuck in an idea? An idea like because impermanence, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, interbeing can only be ideas, but ideas is not enough to liberate us. The Buddha said that his teaching is like a finger pointing to the moon. If you think that the finger is the moon, you miss the moon. So impermanence should be a kind of instrument in order for you to get the insight of impermanence. Impermanence is not a doctrine. Impermanence is a kind of medicine that can help cure the disease of permanence. But if you got the disease of impermanence, it's very difficult to heal. So suppose the notion of impermanence is like this match. You must use it in order to produce the flame. We need the flame. It is the flame that we need and not a match. But without a match, we cannot produce a flame. That is why you use a match in order to produce the flame. And when the flame is born, it begins to consume the match. So when the insight of impermanence is born, it begins to free you from the notion of impermanence. And that is why in the first training of the order of interbeing, you should not be idolatrous about any doctrine and teaching, including Buddhist teaching. You have to free yourself. And it is the insight that can liberate you from ideologies and doctrines and teachings. If we learn impermanence only to defeat permanence, we are still in the realm of speculation, philosophy. Impermanence is not a notion, a doctrine. It should be used as an instrument in order for us to produce the insight of impermanence that will liberate us. Suppose a couple is in a conflict and they are fighting each other over something. The husband is angry and the wife also angry. And both suffer. Suppose both of them close their eyes and visualize, practice using the concentration of impermanence. Ask yourself what you will become 300 years from now. Ask yourself what your beloved one will become 300 years from now. Visualize and see yourself. And it may take a few seconds to touch the truth of impermanence and to realize that it's very unwise to make each other suffer in the present moment. So close your eyes, and with the practice of visualization, in order to help you to touch the truth of impermanence. What shall I become in 100 years, 300 years? What my beloved one will become in 300 years? And that question is enough for you to see the truth of impermanence. You are concentrated. And you see that it's futile, it's ignorance to fight each other like this, to spend time making each other suffer like that. And when you open your eyes, the only thing you want to do now is to open your arm and hug the person in front of you. And both of you are liberated from your anger, just because you know how to touch the nature of impermanence. So impermanence should be a concentration, a practice of concentration, and not just an idea, a doctrine, a teaching. The second exercise is to contemplate non-craving, non-longing. Because when we long for something very strongly, when we crave for something very strongly, we lose the present moment, we lose ourselves and all the wonders of life available in the present moment. We lose life. And we know that happiness is not possible when you are sucked into the future. You allow yourself to be sucked into the future. You are always longing for something, desiring something, and there's no satisfaction, there's no capacity for you to enjoy yourself, enjoy life, enjoy the kingdom of God that is available in the here and the now. That is why we need the second practice, breathing in. I release my longing, I release my craving for something in the future or elsewhere. Contemplating no longing, contemplating no craving. The third is the contemplation of nirvana. Nirvana is our true nature of no birth and no death, no coming, no going, no being, no non-being. Nirvana is the extinction of all notions. In fact, the word nirvana means extinction. The extinction of suffering, of fear, by the extinction of notions and ideas like being, non-being, birth and death. And this is a very deep, very strong practice of concentration. And we can make use of the samadhi, the concentration of emptiness. We can use the concentration called signlessness. We can use the concentration of aimlessness. And we touch our true nature, the nature of no birth and no death, nirvana. God. And to me, God is our true nature of no birth and no death, no coming, no going. God is not outside of us, of reality. God is inside. We have that true nature of no birth and no death. It's like all the waves are made of water. And water is not outside the waves. Water are inside the wave. And it is possible for the wave to recognize that she is water. They are water. And the moment when the wave recognizes that she is water, she loses all fear. And she enjoys going up, and she enjoys going down. So touching nirvana, touching God, touching the ultimate is the aim of the third exercise of mindful breathing in the fourth establishment of mindfulness. We will come back to this a little bit later. And the fourth exercise is to release notions and ideas. In fact, the Sanskrit word means to throw away, very strong. Throw away ideas, like ideas of being and non-being, to be or not to be. The idea like coming and going, the idea as birth and death. So these four exercises help us to look deeply into the nature of our perception of reality. Our body belongs to that realm, our feeling, our mind also. So our scientists are trying to do the same, look deeply into the nature of reality. They use their mind, but they have invented instruments. They use the language of mathematics. And in the realm of spirituality, we do very much the same. We try to understand the nature of reality as it is. And there are instructions as how to do it. And the purpose is very clear. Once we got the insight, we get liberated from fear, from discrimination, from our afflictions. There is a book where you can read about each of the exercises. It is available in English, The Path of Emancipation. So many years ago, we gave a retreat in America on the Sutra on Mindful Breathing. And we treated all the 16 exercises of mindful breathing. And all the Dharma talks were recorded and transcribed and made into that book. So if you want to read more, that is a book that you may like to use. And also in it you can you can see the list of the mental, all the mental formations that we should recognize when they manifest themselves in us. So in the field of meditation, we also inquire about the ultimate reality. We don't do the work of splitting up molecules and particles. We use another method. And the instrument here is mindfulness and concentration. And today we focus on the exercises using concentration in order to break through to the heart of reality. And there is a teaching that is available in every Buddhist tradition. Whether you practice Tibetan Buddhism or Zen Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, that teaching is available. That is the teaching of the three doors of liberation. Tam Giải Thoát Môn, the three doors of liberation. And these three doors are also called the three concentration. And this concentration help us to touch the nature of impermanence, of non-longing, of nirvana, and of throwing away. And first of all, the door called emptiness. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. They are quite different. Shunyata. Please look. This glass is not empty. There's something in it. And this glass is empty. But in order to be empty, to be not empty, the glass has to be there. So emptiness does not mean non-being. And emptiness is a very strong, very profound teaching, especially in Mahayana Buddhism. And when we recite the Heart Sutra, we learn that everything is empty. But it would be very helpful to ask the question, empty of what? This glass is empty of tea, but it's not empty of air, it's full of air. So empty is always empty of what? It's like consciousness is always consciousness of something. When we look into this beautiful chrysanthemum, we have an impression that this flower is full of the cosmos. Everything in its cosmos is there in the flower, including the cloud, the sunshine, the soil, the mineral, time, space, everything. It looks like the whole cosmos have come together and help produce and help manifest the flower. the one contains the all. And when we invite the children to look into a grain of corn, they may be able to see that the grain of corn contains so many things in it. Although it's very tiny, but it is a continuation of several generations of corn plants. And there is the know-how, the knowledge in it. We cannot really call the seed of corn matter. There is a consciousness in it, because we know that the seed of corn is capable of germinating, of making flower and ears of corn. So then there must be knowledge inside. So it's too simplistic to say that the grain of corn is matter. Consciousness is in it, especially when we know that the grain of corn is, first of all, the object of my perception. So this flower is the object of my perception, and when I look deeply into it, I see that it looks like it's full of the cosmos. So we ask the Bodhisattva Avalokita, Mr. Bodhisattva, you said that everything is empty. But to me, this flower is full of the cosmos. If you say that it is empty, you should tell us empty of what? And Bodhisattva may tell us that I agree with you that the flower is full of the cosmos, everything is in there. But there is only one thing that is not there. That is a separate entity, a separate existence. The flower is full of the cosmos, of everything else, but the flower is empty of a separate self. A flower can never be by herself alone. So no separate self. That is the first meaning of emptiness. You cannot be by yourself. You have to interbe with us and the cosmos. And we are all in you. If you look deeply into yourself, you see all of us in you. And that is the beginning of the contemplation of interbeing. And focusing on the teaching of emptiness. And how to apply that into our daily life. Because a teaching, no matter how lovely it is, if it could not be applied to our daily life, it has no value at all. So when a father contemplates himself and looks deeply into his son, he sees that his son is his continuation, that he is fully present in every cell of his son. And making his son suffer is to make him suffer. And he begins to see the truth of interbeing. The Father is in the Son, and the Son is in the Father. Thanks to the Father, the Son can connect with remote ancestors and feel that all the ancestors are in him, and now the Son walks. All the ancestors work at the same time. And if the Son make a peaceful, joyful, happy step, all the ancestors in him enjoy that. It's so kind for you to work for your ancestors, for your parents. Maybe your parents did not have a chance to learn about walking meditation. And now you work for your parents, you work for your ancestors, you work like a free person on this beautiful planet. And you work in the kingdom of God for him, for her. So everything, every breath, every step, everything you do can be done in the insight of, with the insight of interbeing, with emptiness. I told the children yesterday about the verse I had to memorize when I was a novice. It begins by the one who bow and the one who is bowed to. They are both by nature empty. It's a little bit difficult for a 16-year-old novice to understand fully. And he had to memorize that, and he had to practice right since that age. But the fact is that the Buddha is not a separate entity. The Buddha, the nature of the Buddha is also the nature of interbeing. A Buddha is made only of non-Buddha elements. It's like the flower. She is made only of non-flower elements. These elements are sunshine, cloud, soil. They are no flower. They are non-flower elements. But without them, no flower is possible. The same thing is true with the Buddha. So when you look into the Buddha, you don't see him as a separate entity outside of you. You see his nature of interbeing. And when you look at you, you see the same. And that is why you know that the Buddha is not someone out there that you have to confront. The Buddha is right here in you. And that is the insight of interbeing. And because the Buddha is empty of a separate self, and because you are empty of a separate self, that is why communication is very deep. I told the children, if the Buddha is full of self, and the Bauer, is full of myself, no communication is possible. Communication is possible because we are. You are in me, and I am in you. And we can understand the teaching of the Trinity in that way. God the Father is in the Son. And when we encounter the Son, we encounter the Father and the Holy Spirit. So interbeing is right view. Right view, according to Buddhism, is the abolishment of all views, the absence of all views. So that the insight of impermanence, the insight of emptiness, the insight of interbeing could manifest. The relationship between North and South. If the South suffers, the North, there's no way that the North can be truly happy. So countries of the North, while taking care of themselves, should pay attention and help the countries in the South to develop. The safety of the South has something to do with the safety of the North. In fact, we inter-are. And when you take care of him, you take care of yourself. And when you take good care of yourself, you take care of her at the same time. In a relationship, teacher and students, I always see that. Everything I do for myself, I do it for my disciples. And the happiness and the suffering of my disciples have to do with my happiness and suffering. And we know that we interact. And with that kind of awareness, we help each other. We belong to one body, a Sangha. So the insight of emptiness can be put into practice. And when you have the insight of emptiness, interbeing, you don't suffer anymore of separation, of hate, of anger, of despair. And that is the fruit of the contemplation, called the contemplation on emptiness. The second door of liberation is the door of signlessness. Vô tưởng. Sign here means the appearance, the form. You might be fooled by an appearance. You might be fooled by the form. And that is why we have to learn to train ourselves to see beyond the forms, beyond the signs. Suppose you have a particular sympathy with a certain cloud, and you like that cloud. I wrote a poem on a river, and the river was chasing a cloud all day long, and he suffered because the clouds are impermanent. You cannot retain a cloud forever. So you have your favorite cloud, and suddenly your cloud may disappear. And the river suffers because she spent all her life chasing after clouds. And when your cloud is no longer there in the sky, you cry. Oh my beloved cloud, where are you now? I miss you. You have passed from being into non-being. I cannot see you anymore. So that's what we feel when we lose someone who is close to us. Just yesterday, she was still alive. She talked, she walked, she smiled. And today, nothing. She looks like she has passed from being into non-being. But in fact, our cloud is still there somehow. In the beginning, maybe half the cloud has become rain, and the other half spent some time and become snow. And we should be able to see the continuation of our cloud, in order not to say that our cloud has passed from being into non-being. In fact, it is impossible for a cloud to die. Because to die means from something, you suddenly become nothing. From someone, you suddenly become no one. And looking deeply into the heart of reality, you don't see anything like that at all. Nothing can be reduced to nothingness. It is impossible for your cloud to die. Your cloud might become snow or hail or rain, but it is impossible for your cloud to become nothing. It is impossible to pass from being into non-being. Your beloved one is still somewhere, and if you have the eyes of a bodhisattva, you can still recognize your beloved one in her new appearances, in her new signs. So you have to look beyond the sign, and that is the wisdom of signlessness. Why your beloved cloud has been transformed into the rain, she's calling on you. Darling, darling, I'm here. Don't you see me? You are not capable of seeing your beloved cloud in her new form, the rain. So that is why, in order to remove our grief, to remove our despair and our fear, we should get behind the signs. The Buddha said, where there is a sign, there is a delusion. And that is why we should not count on signs. We have to learn how to see things in the light of signlessness. A few minutes ago, we have produced a flame, and the flame is no longer there for you to see. And we say that the flame is dead. But if we look deeply, we see that during the time the flame was manifested in terms of light, heat, smoke, it's very real. And during that time, the flame penetrated into me. I still have an image of it in me. And some of the heat penetrate into me, into you, and into the cosmos. And some of the smoke has now joined a cloud. And there's still some here. So the flame has not become nothing. The flame continues always. And we need some contemplation in order to see the continuation of a flame. In our daily life, we produce thoughts, we produce feelings, we produce speech, and we produce action. These are not sin, but they are there. In the Buddhist teaching, that is called action. Action, triple action: thought, speech, and physical act. Everything you produce in these three aspects continue to be, and that is your continuation. The Buddhist term is karma. Karma means action. Triple karma: body, speech, and mind. And if we know how to practice according to the recommendation of the Buddha, right thinking, right speech, and right action, you are sure a beautiful continuation, a happy continuation. And if we don't know how to do that, we produce thought of anger and fear and hatred. We spoke in such a way to destroy ourselves and destroy others. We do things to destroy. That is not a beautiful continuation of ours. Nothing is lost in terms of action. And when this body disintegrates, we continue always with our action, whether more beautifully or less beautifully, but we continue always like a cloud. So to say that you don't exist anymore after the disintegration of this body, that is not the truth. When I pour some tea into the glass, the tea is in here, and when I drink the tea, I know that the tea in the pot has been going out, spending herself into the world. In the morning, if I had a cup of tea, it will help to make my Dhamma talk a little bit more beautiful. So if you look into the Dhamma talk, you can see the tea in it. So the tea is not just in the pot. It has a journey, it travels, it has many forms. So when we produce thought, speech, and action, we continue with our action. So we should not think that of ourselves only as this body, these feelings. We continue always, even after the disintegration of this body. So the second concentration, signlessness, is to get beyond signs and appearance and not caught in ideas like annihilation, eternalism, which are wrong views. That those who believe that the soul is eternal, we survive time and space, we remain exactly the same. Eternalism. And that those who are caught in a view of annihilation, after the disintegration of this body, there is absolutely nothing left. So these are wrong views. And these wrong views can be removed very easily with the meditation on signlessness. So whether the cloud has the form of a cloud, whether it has the form of rain, the tea, or the river, a cloud always continues. It's a wonderful journey. And the third concentration is called aimlessness. Vô tác. the meditation on aimlessness help us to see that everything is there already. You don't need to run anymore. And you can remove your longing, your craving, your desire. And when a flower like this one practices aimlessness, she feels that it's wonderful to be herself. This is a wonderful manifestation of the cosmos in this form. She does not have to be something else. She does not envy to become a daffodil or a lotus flower. She is beautiful like that. You are already what you want to become. You don't need to be another person. You belong to the kingdom of God. You are the manifestation. No longer any complex, any longing, any desire. Complete satisfaction, complete fulfillment, thanks to the practice of aimlessness. Aimlessness, the Sanskrit word is apranihita. It means that not to put something in front of you and running after that. We may be running all our life and have no chance to live our life. And the practice, the teaching is to be able to stop and live the wonders of life right here and right now. Aimlessness. What you want to achieve is already there. The kingdom of God is there. You don't have to look for it. And with aimlessness, with the concentration of aimlessness, you can stop and you can be yourself and you can touch all the wonders of life. You can touch the kingdom of God, happiness, brotherhood, sisterhood, happiness, and liberation. Every tradition, every Bodhisattva tradition has the teaching of the three doors of liberation. And practicing these three concentration, we are able to touch nirvana, our true nature of no birth and no death. And we can throw away all notions like the notions of birth and death, coming and going and so on. Suppose we draw a line from left and right, representing the course of time. And suppose we pick up one point here, we call it B, birth. Someone is born in this moment and they make a birth certificate for him. They forget that child has been there 9 months in the womb of his mother. They think that that person exists only on point B. But in fact, before B, the child had been there. And even before the moment of conception, 9 months ago. The child does not begin at the point conception. Because before that, the child has been in the father, has been in the mother somehow. So this is a moment of continuation. And this is also a moment of continuation. It's not the beginning. There is no beginning. And yet we believe that before we were born, we did not exist. And we call this segment non-being, no being. And we describe this moment on as a being. And we think that there will be a moment when you stop being. You call it death. And you continue your being, and at the point D, you pass into non-being again. And that is what we have in our mind concerning birth and death. We have passed from non-being into being. And we go past from being into non-being. So birth and death are two notions that go together. And the fourth exercise recommends that you throw away the notion of birth and death, because your true nature is the nature of no birth and no death. Before the cloud, your cloud appears in the form of a cloud, she had been the water in the ocean and the heat produced by the sun. The former life of the cloud is that a cloud has not come from nothing. A cloud has not passed from non-being into being. So there is no birth. There is only a continuation. Maybe for your next birthday, we will sing, instead of happy birthday, we say happy continuation day to you. So when you look at something like a cloud, and deeply, we see that the cloud has not passed from non-being into being, and will not pass from being into non-being. Her nature, the cloud, the nature of the cloud is the nature of no birth and no death. When you perceive something with your six faculties of senses, you qualify it as being. And when you don't perceive them, you have the tendency to call them non-being. It's like in this Dharma hall, there's a lot of water vapor. We all breathe out, and there's a lot of vapor here. You don't see it, but this vapor will become a cloud. So we cannot qualify this as non-being because we don't see it. So discussion like whether God exists or not exists, Nirvana is or is not, you are there or you are not there, they are all based on our notion of being and non-being. And if we look deeply into the concept of being and non-being, we don't have to discuss anymore. We save a lot of ink, saliva, and so on. We don't need so much theology and philosophy. So looking into the nature of the notion of being and non-being, you see that being and non-being are just notions. They cannot be applied to reality. You cannot describe a cloud in terms of being and non-being. You cannot describe your beloved one in terms of being and non-being. And you cannot describe God in terms of being and non-being. So to spend time to defend the view that God exists, we lose our time. God is beyond being and non-being. There are theologians who say that God is the foundation, the ground of being. I want to suggest that he will reflect again. If God is the ground of being, who will be the ground of non-being? God is free from these two notions. And that is why with the contemplation of this concentration, we can remove the notion of being and non-being. And that is why yesterday I said that to be or not to be, that is not the real question. When you look into the family album, you can see yourself as a 5-year-old boy or 5-year-old girl. Ask yourself the question, am I the same person with that little boy? Or I am a different one? You look so different from the little boy, the little girl. Your form, your feelings, your perceptions are quite different. You cannot say that you are identical to that little girl or little boy. Because of impermanence, you have changed into an adult. And if you compare the two persons, you cannot say that you are exactly the same person. Maybe your name remain the same. Your first name, your family name remain the same. But in reality, the 5 skandhas have changed a lot. You are a continuation of that little boy or little girl. And the question is, if you are not the same person with that little boy, are you a totally different person? You are not a totally different person. Because you are a continuation of that little boy. It's like the child is a continuation of his father and mother. The word continuation is good. And that is why the answer cannot be either the same or a different one. So there is a pair of notions that should be removed. And it is recommended that you remove that pair of opposites so that freedom could be possible. After you have removed the notion of birth and death, being and non-being, you remove the notion of sameness, and otherness. You are not exactly the same with your father, with the little boy, but you are not entirely another person. So this is the middle way, transcending both notions, sameness and otherness, and living mindfully and with concentration. We witness impermanence, and we touch the truth of no sameness, no otherness, and we reduce greatly the suffering and the fear in us. In order to touch the ground of your being, in order to touch your true nature, nirvana, in order to touch God, it is important to learn how to remove these pairs of notions. Because the absence of all these notions means the manifestation of God, of nirvana, of true nature. And classically there is another pair to consider, that is the pair of coming and going. Where have I come from and where shall I go? You ask that question for yourself, and you ask that question for your beloved one. Darling, where have you come from? Why have you left me? You can talk to the flame. The flame is somewhere there. We don't need the manifestation of a flame in order to say the flame is there. My flame, your flame is free from being and non-being. My dear little flame, I know you are still there. Why don't you manifest to us once more? And there the flame manifests itself. And we are careful now, we don't want to term it as being in order to suffer of its non-being. Let us ask our dear little flame this question. My dear little flame, are you the same flame that appeared before? Or are you a totally different one? And the answer is no sameness, no otherness. And now we ask the question, my dear little flame, where have you come from? And if we listen with concentration, we will hear the voice of the flame. Dear Thai, dear Sangha, I have come from nowhere. My nature is no coming. I have not come from the west, not from the east, not from the north, not from the south. When conditions are sufficient, I manifest myself. That's all. And we know that the flame is right. She has not come from the south, the north, the east, the west. When conditions are sufficient, including a movement of my finger, she manifests. That is the truth. The truth is no coming. The nature of the flame is non-local, non-locality. And if we are still regret the beautiful image of the flame, and we say, my dear little flame, you are no longer there. Where have you gone? And then the little flame will say, dear Thầy, dear Sangha, I have not gone anywhere. I have not gone to the south, nor the north, nor the east, nor the west. When conditions are no longer sufficient, I just stop my manifestation. I manifest in other forms when conditions are sufficient. And that is true. Our flame has not gone to the south or the north. Our flame just stopped the manifestation in order to manifest in other ways. And if we are attentive, you can see the continuation of our flame in us and in the cosmos. Because in a brief period of 3 seconds, she has produced heat, light, smoke, ash, and so on. She continues. And therefore, the pair opposite color coming and going are notions that should be removed in order for us to really touch the ultimate reality, God, Nirvana. I understand Christianity in the light of the Buddhist practice. To me, God is the true nature of birth and death that are inherent in every one of us, in every creature. And God is not an entity out there that I have to confront, to deal with. God is my true nature of no birth and no death. And if I know how to rest on God, in God, I will no be longer afraid. If the wave know how to rely on water, to rest on water, she will no longer be afraid. She will enjoy going up, and she will enjoy going down. She's not afraid of being and non-being. She is not afraid of coming and going, because she is capable of touching water in herself. With meditation, with concentration, we can touch the ultimate Nirvana, God, inherent in us. That is why our idea that God is a separate entity out there that we have to look, to search for, we have to re-examine that. And please remember the image of a wave. A wave does not need to go and look for water. She is water. The same thing with us and God. We don't have to look for God. God is our true nature of no birth and no death. And if you know how to rest on God, you have peace. You are not victims of fear, despair anymore. And then if God is there, His kingdom should be there also. And the kingdom is not something you have after you die. No. That may be too late. The kingdom is here and now. And everything in us and around us is telling us that that flower belongs to the kingdom. If she does not belong to the kingdom, to what do you want her to be, to belong to. So the kingdom is here and now. And the Western civilization and culture have been based on practice, on the belief in God and in the kingdom. But if we are in crisis because we don't see God in the right place, the right time. We don't see the kingdom in the right place and right time. If we know how to do it, and then we can overcome this spiritual crisis of the 21st century. So the fourth establishment of mindfulness offer 4 exercises. And the first exercise is about contemplating impermanence. And if you touch impermanence, you touch non-self, you touch interbeing. The second is to release the longing, the craving of something in the future and elsewhere. And that goes with aimlessness. The third is contemplating the ultimate, contemplating nirvana, no birth, no death, contemplating God. And with very concrete practices and not just ideas. It is with the instruments called the 3 doors of liberation that you can touch directly your true nature of no birth, no death, nirvana, God. And then you will be able to throw away all the notions that are at the foundation of your fear and despair and separation. So let us arrange so that we have the time to look more into this teaching and put it into the practice and get the liberation, the freedom and the joy that we deserve. And to me, to practice the 2 traditions, to belong to both traditions is something possible and natural. Double belonging. You can continue to be a Christian, a Jew, and yet you can profit from the Buddhist teaching and practice in order to deepen your understanding of your own, your root tradition. Double belonging. There's no conflict at all if we are not caught in words and notions.